All right, so we are in our second month here talking about family dynamics, right? So every person, when we're doing the inside out journey, we start with the self. That was all last month. Now, the next direct circle around the self, the next direct influence around the self is the family. And so if you've never thought about your family dynamics, you've never thought about your siblings or your mother, your relationship, you are doing yourself a disservice. Every person is impacted by their family and their family dynamics, whether they want to admit it or not. So if you've never critically analyzed what it looks like to be in your family dynamic, if you've never critically considered, zoomed out, and really looked objectively, if you have never done that, you are not doing yourself a favor, because the more aware you can get about how your family impacted you for good and for bad, which all families do. There's no such thing as a perfect family. Um, the more blind you are. If you've not done it, the more blind you are. So if you're like, my family's perfect, there's nothing wrong with my family, then unfortunately you are hanging out in ignorance. I don't want that for you. There's plenty wrong in your family. There's plenty right in your family. Families are made up of people doing the best they can with what they've got. And so let's just dive right in. Mothers. How has your relationship with your mother shaped you? That is the first thing that you want to think about. And in order to do this, you really have to get clear on the dynamic between you and your mother. What does that look like? Were you guys true parent child? Were you more friends? Were you the disciplinarian and they were kind of the partier? There's a lot of ways in which a family dynamic, a mother-child relationship can look. Did you lose your mother early on? Did your mother leave? Did she abandon you? Right? If you have not thought about it, or if you try to say, my mother relationship didn't have anything to do with how I am now, you are woefully ignorant. There is no child on this planet that is not impacted by the relationship with their mother. It is not possible. It is not possible. This is how we were brought into the world. We have a relationship with our mother before we even leave the womb. So there are things that happen in the womb that the mother did that affect you and you don't even know it. And you can't possibly know it because you were a fetus, right? And so you really want to talk to your mom if you can, if she's around, if you guys have that kind of relationship, about what was it like during your pregnancy with me? How did I come out? What was it like taking care of me? What kind of a baby was I? If you can ask those questions, you can get a better understanding of how you came into this world, what you looked like, what you felt like. I know for me, my entrance into the world was a particularly difficult one. My mother, I was her firstborn child, and I came out only to my shoulder. It got caught down the birth canal. They had to push me back up and then open her up as a C-section. They took me out. Then when they closed her up, the incision got infected. And then they tried to give her penicillin, which she was allergic to. So the experience with me coming out into the world was extremely traumatic for her, for me, for a whole bunch of things. The more you can investigate the relationship with your mother, the better. And so I know with my mom, this is a very true statement. This is from her lips, not mine. And I don't think she'll be upset with me sharing it with you. She always said that she didn't know purpose in life until I came into her life. Like, that's when she knew she was very unhappy here. I won't give her story. It's not mine to share, but I will say that me coming into the world gave her a new sense of purpose. And I will say that my mother is one of the best mothers. She's not perfect. Nobody is. She did the best she could with what she had. But she is one of the best mothers that I have ever known. Additionally, that a lot of people who know her have said. So it's not just me being biased here. I personally am very grateful that I had a wonderful mother, because I was a very hard child. I am a lot. I am a lot. A different mom would have made me turn out very, very differently. I know that. So my relationship with my mother has shaped me in such a way that I'm actually a pretty decent human being. And a lot of that has to do with her example, her unconditional love, her unconditional support, her unconditional trying to just make life easier and better for us all the time. Um, and so my relationship with my mother has shaped me because I wouldn't be here without her in a lot of different ways, honestly. Personally, when I was sentenced back in July 2019, and when I thought all of my dreams had died in August 2019, and I couldn't get up off the floor. I've told some of you guys about this. It was all too heavy at that point. It had been 18 months of hoping for something to be a little bit fairer than it was. It wasn't really that fair. It was very hard. It was very crushing, very crippling, and I was ready to end my life very seriously. And so I hadn't gotten off the floor for 3 days. I was planning my suicide, and my mom came in to the room because I was staying with her at the time, and she snuggled up under my arm, and she said, "If you die, I'll die too." And I knew she was being serious. She wasn't just saying it. And a tear kind of rolled down my cheek, and I was like, I don't want to live, and now I can't die. What the fuck am I gonna do? And I'm forever grateful for that moment because like it really made me realize I'm living on borrowed time. Like if it weren't for that moment, I would absolutely be dead. There's no doubt in my mind because I really did not want to live. I did not want to live this life. Um, and my relationship with my mother has impacted me in so many ways, so many ways. Um, and if you are smart, you will think about it because it has also impacted you in so many ways. If your mother was a helicopter parent, trust me when I say you were impacted by it. If your mother was absent, I promise you, you were affected by it. If you were never good enough for your mother, if she smothered you, if she was too much a parent and not enough a friend, if she was somebody you felt safe with, if she was somebody you didn't feel safe with, there is no possible way you do not have some level of impact from your mother. So think about it. Think about your relationship, what it looks like, how it shaped you. It's so, 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 so important. Once you have that, then you can go to how has it helped you? What have you gained from it? What has been beneficial to you? With my relationship with my mom, I've probably always had a overinflated sense of responsibility, but I watched my mother work a night shift, take us to school, like not sleep, not eat. Like I watched my mother sacrifice everything so we could have clothes, have food, have shelter. You know, her and my father split up when I was 3, when my sister was 2, and my brother was 1. Right? So my mother, the work ethic, I already probably had a good work ethic when I was young, but the work ethic, always, the responsibility. It was my mother who said, plead guilty to the crime, take all the responsibility, take the lion's share of the responsibility. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I'm not gonna, what's the point of going to trial to make everybody's life worse? That will actually harm this guy. I'm not gonna do it. So I've never had a hard time taking responsibility, and that has a lot to do with my mom. Just kind of like she always said, and I always agree, there's better and there's worse. There's a lot of things that, were axioms that my mother gave me that are very true. In a really different way, my mother was my only friend for a very long time. Like the only person that knew me. I've never really fit in with anyone ever for too long. I grow very quickly. And so I have a lot of different friends at different stages of my life, all of whom I'm grateful for and I've always been grateful for, but not a lot of who stay around, especially after everything that happened. And so I can quite literally say I don't talk to pretty much anybody I've grown up with. I really don't. And my whole youth, from, I don't know, 5 to 32, my mother was my best friend. And That was tremendously helpful because I didn't have a safe space outside of my mother. She was always my safe space. She was always the place I could go to and be myself. Now, of course, that also, so you want to think about that. How did your mother's relationship help you? To my point, it also unfortunately was harmful, right? How did your mother's relationship, how has your relationship with your mother hurt you? It was harmful for me to love her so much, harmful for me to be so close to her because I never wanted to disappoint her. I never wanted to let her down. I always wanted to make her proud. I wanted to take on any worry that she might have. I wanted to make her life easier all the time. So it put an extra pressure. No one else, I put an extra pressure on myself to show up differently. Right. So with my mother and um, even though I knew I could go to her as a safe space for anything, I didn't because I didn't want to hurt her. I didn't want to tell her the things. So like when I would, which on one hand, I didn't realize I was raped. When I was 14, I was raped and I didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't find out until I was 21. I was 21 and I was sitting at the an RA's resident assistant like training, and they were talking about domestic abuse, sexual abuse, and they said, you know, if they had said something along the lines of, if you say no and then they continue, that is rape. And I raised my hand and I was like, no, it's not. And they were like, yes, it is. And I like put my hand down. I was like, oh my God. And in that moment, I figured out I was raped. I didn't know. And so 7 years had gone by at that point where I had this trauma I had no awareness of. And then I read the book Speak by Lori Halse Anderson. And she goes through a very similar situation. And actually, the first person I had told was my college professor I was very close to. But then I drove home 30 minutes from college to my mother's house and I told her, right? And she had said, like, I knew something was the matter and that you wouldn't tell me, you wouldn't talk about it. And I thought that's probably true. Yeah, because I loved her so much. I didn't want to tell her anything that hurt me. I didn't want to hurt her too. This also happened in a less sort of traumatic situation where when I was 14, I had my collarbone broken for me. I didn't break it. It got broken for me. I was standing there on this sort of ledge. Somebody came up and like picked me up at the knees. I flipped over his shoulder and landed in between the curb and the car, and my shoulder popped up and it broke. And so they got me. It was after school hours. And I've mentioned this somewhere before, but my sister walked by. I was a freshman in high school. She was an eighth grader. My sister walked by. I was in a wheelchair with my arm kind of like hanging, like, you know, and I said, don't tell mom. Like, mom wouldn't find out. I'm 14. I'm going to have to go to the hospital. Like, I've broken a bone. Of course, mom's going to find out. Right. But I literally told my sister as she was walking home, don't tell mom about this. Not because I was going to get in any trouble, because it would be an added extra burden to my mother. And so that, through no fault of my mother's, was something that I internalized. I took on. I never wanted to hurt her. Now, does that mean I never hurt her? Of course not. There are plenty of things I did that hurt her. Probably not telling her things that she knew were wrong was harmful, you know. But we do things like that when we love people. We want to protect them. We want to shield them. And I did that, even though like there's no reason to. And so it really did make me kind of harden my heart in ways that my mother never had. You know, she kind of always said, like, never let him see you sweat. And what that meant for her and what that meant for me were two different things, because my mother is extraordinarily open-hearted. And so she would come home and talk about it. I would talk about it to nobody. I would talk about nothing to anybody. I would just pressurize it all, keep it in, rise above it, never let him see me sweat, until I had this complete perfectionist mentality where like, I don't want to crack. I don't want to slip up. My mother never had that. She had a much healthier understanding of like, you do the best you can with what you got, that I didn't apply to myself. So there's a lot of things that were really good advice that I took and internalized and not misconstrued, but sort of used in a not self-helpful way, in a sort of a harmful way. And again, like I said, nobody was breaking my path but me. So every relationship with our family members should be analyzed. Now, I'm giving you some insights into my own personal experience, specific ways that I have been helped and harmed by this relationship. That's the case for everybody. It is not possible. Love and grief are two sides of the same coin. You can't know real love if you haven't experienced real hurt. I'm sorry to say, like, the people that we love a lot have the capacity to hurt us a lot. And when we don't explore any of it, we do ourselves a disservice. So it is important for you to realize what it is that you and your mother have shared relationship dynamic wise, how that's been helpful, because I'm sure there are ways in which it was helpful, how it's been harmful. I'm sure there are ways in which it's been harmful. You can do this for every relationship all the time, including the relationship with yourself. And so I urge you, I hope, I implore you to take some time to really consider it, because if you never have, it should be an interesting study. And if you have already thought about it, that's really important, because it'll help you see what patterns there are, what gets repeated and what doesn't. If we're not consciously aware of cycles, we'll just repeat them. Unless we're so aware of it, we break it, right? Like if your mother did something that you absolutely hated, you will never do, then you'll break the cycle. But that's because you're hyper aware of the thing. If you're not aware of something that was done to you, you're just going to keep doing it. You don't realize it. You can't help yourself. And that's true of anything. I'm talking about my relationship with my mother, but you can, family dynamics, finances, work ethic. I mean, you name it, the way your parents show up. We'll talk about fathers next week. I'm sure you're not surprised. The way your parents show up or don't show up changes, influences how you show up. From 0 to 7, all you do is take in information. You can't help but watch the world around you. And the people who are around you are your family, like 99% of the time. So that's all subconscious programming. From 0 to 7, your brain is in theta state. So you have to go back and kind of figure out what the heck went on from an adult perspective, from a new lens, from an analytical lens, so that you can really get a good grasp of who you are, what belongs to you, and what's something you learned from an outside source that doesn't necessarily serve you. So I hope this is helpful. I hope this has been a good way to start thinking about your relationship with your mother and family dynamics. If you are enjoying this series, please like, subscribe, share it, talk to me on Instagram at Nicolina Eichel. I'm going to keep bringing this to you. I hope it is helpful, and I will see you guys next time. Have a wonderful week.